Hello friends, and welcome to a very special edition of the Best Bits of the Breakfast Show today, as we broadcast live from Arromanches to mark the 70th anniversary of the D-Day landings. On the way we'll meet war veterans who were all part of that game-changing invasion, as well as an array of experts who will guide us through the occasion. So this is your official mascara warning. Sit back and enjoy our journey to France. Well, good morning, happy Friday to you. Normally at this point in the show you'd hear our 7 o'clock jingle, but today none of that nonsense as we approach the Arromanches coast of Normandy on a landing craft launched from HMS Bulwark as Radio 2 commemorates the 70th anniversary of the D-Day landings. I'm here in the middle of the ocean, well almost in the middle of the ocean, with Captain Jonas Salter. Captain Jonas, I know why I'm here. Why are you here?
I'm here because as part of HMS Bulwark, we are commemorating D-Day landings, but specifically, I'm in charge of all the landing craft that you're one of them right now. Okay, we're about half a mile off the coast. We're approaching it pretty speedily, I have to say. What a gorgeous morning, though. Almost the opposite of what happened 70 years ago. Yeah, you couldn't have asked for a better day. But do just remember, we're inside the Mulberry Harbour, which gives us a lot of protection from the elements. Okay, and the sun's shining. Is this flat calm? Would you describe it as flat calm this evening? Yeah, this is pretty much flat calm. We're going to get seasick out here. Okay, well, thanks for having us on board. I understand we have a wade to the shore on the way. Yeah, you do have a wade. Before you go, can I just ask that myself and my wife are in the club permanently for everything? Oh, you're definitely the Good Morning Sis Club. Excellent, okay. Excellent. Honorary members. So it's phones out of the pockets because the water's going to come up to our waist. Yes, it is. Hilarious. Nobody told us about this. Right. I'm sure you can imagine what this might feel like to be here right now. Humbling, of course, poignant, thought-provoking, exciting too, but we must remember many things did not go to plan, as Jeremy touched upon there in his package on this day 70 years ago. Landing craft found themselves stranded on sandbars, immediately becoming sitting ducks for enemy fire. Several of these same craft even capsized before they even reached the French coast. The pre-invasion aerial bombing campaign proved hugely ineffective in many key areas of the 5 beaches either side of us right now. Paratroopers landed miles from their intended drop zones behind enemy lines hours before the invasion. Countless tanks were launched too early from their carrier ships and never even made it to the shore. Many of their crew drowning, and most tragic of all, tens of thousands of innocent French citizens lost their lives in the ensuing grand invasion, a continued bombing campaign following the initial events of D-Day. So this is by no means a celebration of what happened, but in every way it is definitely a commemoration of what many believe was the turning point of the Second World War. We'll be here until 9:30 this morning, talking to as many people who this matters most to as we possibly can. The ramp is down. Captain, are we ready to enter the water? Are you ready to get wet again? I think so, yeah. Okay, phones in the air, everybody. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, is it a bit too deep here? Just about still moving. I'm too eager. Oh, I see, because we have to wait, otherwise we get run over. Yes. By our own craft. Okay, then you've got to let the ramp go down first. Okay. This is always my problem. You were quite keen there. Right. I do. Now we can go. Right, come on, let's go, Captain. Okay, we're in the water. And Arromanches is 50 yards away. We'll be on dry land soon, we hope. Don't let go of me. I won't.
Hi, I'm Mary Berry, and you're listening to the Chris Evans Daily Download.
All right, special day here in Arromanches. Super special day. 6th of June 2014, representing Surrey, Mike Jansen and his troop of 68 students, so year 6 students from Bushy Hill Junior School, Brother Clampton's their week-long trip to Normandy, representing Portsmouth, Richard Heselden and his 29th Infantry Reenactment Group are coming face-to-face, the remaining members of the actual 29th Infantry, and representing Berkhamsted, Neil Ruthven and his cousin Graham have finally finished their restoration project on an original 1944 Willys MBG used on D-Day, and we are all entirely jealous. Today's show is dedicated to the people of Normandy who, despite suffering unthinkable loss themselves as a result of Operation Overlord, still welcome veterans and friends and relatives of the Allied forces back here year after year with warm hearts and smiling faces, as today's show is entitled Real Freedom is Never Free.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, my oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine heading my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay.
We have Friday morning here, the 70th commemoration of D-Day. And if it isn't Hugh Edwards on the beach.
My dear chap, you've had your own Normandy landing.
I have, what about this? It wets up to the waist, but surprisingly warm, as I've said. Now, if you're about to embark upon an epic 8 hours of live TV coverage at today's event, did you manage to get some sleep last night, or was it like the night before, a really important exam where you have to remember all those facts and figures?
Yeah, a bit like that, and I got to sleep at about 1, and then at about 3:30, I thought it was time to get up, realised it wasn't, got back to sleep for about 40 minutes, woke up again. I keep on seeing flags, and I keep on seeing world leaders in my dreams.
Okay, and what do you have to get right today? What are the big important bits?
The tone, more than the facts. I think that's really important. It's just to reflect the tone of what's going on. There's lots of emotion, you know that. People are dignified. They want to reflect on people who are no longer with us, people who were here 10 years ago. We're not here now. And of course, those people who never made it off the beaches 70 years ago. So getting the tone right, Chris, is more important than anything else.
But we can't get too melancholic, can we? Because,
No.
Because last night, a lot of the vets were out, and they were out till pretty late, actually.
They were having a good night, yeah. And in Arromanches last night, there was a bit of a party atmosphere. Arromanches is a bit like that. And today, you do have events which strike a different note. So clearly, your cathedral service in Bayeux is going to be solemn, and your service at the War Cemetery in Bayeux is going to be solemn. The Queen will be there. The international event, more of a global thing after lunch, that's going to be where the world leaders are. And then, of course, today, tea time, here, right where we are now, Chris, that'll be when the Veterans Parade. Kate and William will be here. I think that's going to be, yeah, they'll be moving, but I think that'll be quite an uplifting event. So that won't be too solemn.
All right, now pop those headphones on, because as far as reporting is concerned, D-Day was also a game changer, as for the first time ever, reporters moved with and in amongst the troops for the first time. Let's get some idea of what that sounded like.
This is the day and this is the hour. The sky is lightening over the coast of Europe as we go in. The sun is blazing down brightly now. It's almost like an omen, the way it suddenly came out just as we were going in. The whole sky is bright, the sea is a glittering mass of silver, with all these craft of every kind moving across it, and the great battleships in the background blazing away at the shore. The paratroops are landing. They're landing all around me as I speak. They've come in from the sea, and they're fluttering down, red, white, and blue parachutes fluttering down, and they're just about the best thing that we've seen for a good many hours.
I'm lying down at full length here in the cornfield. Just in the hedges around me, I can see many men taking shelter behind the banks, wearing their steel helmets, while the terrific barrage goes on around us. The shells are whistling overhead now. Just listen to them.
So 70 years on, Hugh, we're still seeing the effect of that, an inspiration, if you like, of that first in the thick of it reporting.
I can't really stress enough how things changed. Around D-Day, BBC started this thing called BBC War Report. And suddenly, you were getting reports from the thick of the action. We hadn't had that before, for lots of different reasons, including secrecy and sensitivity. But suddenly, you had people who were prepared to go out with troops, prepare reports, file them, obviously, and they'd send them back. They weren't live as we know today, but they were reports done as live. And you got a sense of the terror, you got a sense of the action, you got a sense of the scale of the invasion that was going on. So war reporting for D-Day actually changed the face of journalism, there's no question about it.
Okay, now you have to pick up that baton again, once again today, 9:15, BBC One. Yeah. You're on for 8 hours.
Yeah. Have you got any sandwiches?
No, we don't think so, actually. We're just wading through the ocean.
Yeah.
So Andy, we'll get them first.
I should say, in petite baguette, okay?
Yeah,
That'll be fine. Thank you very much.
So, see, that's the Ponty people at TV. They always want to know where the food is. Right, now, thank you, Hugh.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great to talk to you here. Once again, the sun is beating down here at Arromanches. A lady now going to deliver our post, a very important lady. She is the granddaughter of Sir Winston Churchill. Her name is Celia Sandys.
Good morning, Chris. On this day in 1944, a loaf of bread weighing 4 pounds cost 3p. Laurence Olivier was filming his classic Shakespeare film, Henry V. This was one of my grandfather's most favourite films, and he watched it time and time again. The blackout in the UK ran from 10:57 p.m. until 5 a.m. British troops were issued with the book Instructions for British Servicemen in France, 1944. The first widely used sunscreen was produced by Benjamin Green, an airman and later a pharmacist. And finally, Berlin or Bust by Sam Brown and the Six Swingers was #1 on the BBC hit chart.
Hi, I'm Helen Skelton and you're listening to the Chris Evans Daily Download. For more information, photos and fun, head to the Radio 2 website.
Well, here on behalf of all those guys and all those very special girls who we owe so much to, and always will, is the first of our forces favourites. This gentleman is called Fred Walker. Fred, it's over to you.
My name's Fred Walker. I was in the Commandos, number 3 Commando. We joined the army at 16. We was working on a building site at Old Bailey, and we got the sack for laying about trying to get our little bodies sunburnt. So I said to my mate, come on, we'll go and join the Navy. We went to the recruitment office up in Euston Road, and we went in there, and it was a sergeant sitting there. This was in 1941. And he said, what do you want, boys? I said, well, we want to join the Navy. He said, don't you get in the Navy, you get in the infantry. He said, you have to bring your birth certificate. If you haven't got one, get your parents to sign. So what we did, I signed his and he signed mine on the same bits of paper. To top it off, they accepted him. They didn't accept me at first because I've only got one kidney. I had a kidney out when I was a boy of 5. He was decimated, so was I. After about 2 weeks passing water and all that, they accepted me. I was 16, coming up for 17. We landed in Normandy on D-Day at Sword Beach. We got up to Pegasus Bridge to meet the Paras. They all threw their hats in the air. And then we went on to a little place called Amperville, and that's where they stayed. The boys stayed up there for about 80 odd days. I didn't know. I was very fortunate. I got a slight wound a week after. My forces favourite would have to be Unforgettable, Nat King Cole. I've still got tapes over there of Nat King Cole. Unforgettable, that's what you are.
Hi, I'm Alfie Bow, and in between vocal warm-ups, I listen to the Chris Evans Daily Download. And that's what you're doing too.
Okay, this is BBC Radio 2. We are live from Normandy. Bonjour tout le monde! Okay, Christophe, BBC, don't mind, you call me anything you like. Alright, let's now meet a gentleman who, as a dispatch driver, drove one of the trucks off a landing craft onto Juno Beach and is here in Arromanches to pay his respects to those who were lost. We met last night under a sky full of parachuters and fireworks, landing right here on the beach. Let's have a round of applause for Gordon Prime, please. Good morning, Gordon.
Morning.
First of all, tell us about your regiment.
I was in the Royal Army Service Corps.
Okay, where were you based in England?
We were based all over England, but prior to coming to Normandy, we were based in Leigh-on-Sea.
All right, now, Gordon, you were a motorcycle dispatch rider.
That's correct.
That landed on D-Day. Tell us your experience of the Channel crossing, first of all, to the ramp on the landing craft being lowered and seeing French soil, or sand, if you like, for the first time.
Oh, yes, we came over on a landing craft tank, LCT. I was driving a 3-ton truck loaded with high explosive ammunition and petrol, and my motorcycle was on the back of the truck. We brought into Juno Beach. We were a second wave. We landed about 9:30 in the morning. All we could hear was a beachmaster calling us in on a loud hailer. Anyway, the ramp went down, and I saw the beach, and all I could hear was say, "Get the hell out of here." So I saw a gap in the sand dunes, and I made for that. Went straight to the gap, with the other trucks following me. The tanks went to another gap. We had tanks in front of us, and we got inland about 2 miles. We dug in, and there we waited to join our own unit.
And eventually you actually made it all the way to Germany.
Oh, eventually. We were to the Battle of the Arnhem, Battle of the Deutschland Forest, Battle of the Rhine, right through into Germany.
One of your favourite sleeping places en route was in one of those magnificent troop-carrying gliders at Pegasus Bridge.
Yes, oh, that's right. I had to sleep one night. I was at Pegasus Bridge taking a dispatch up there. I had to stay overnight. The only place I could get my head down was in a glider.
And these gliders were crash-landed on purpose.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
As close to that bridge as possible, weren't they?
Yes, Major Howard Pilot of Oxen Bucks Light Infantry did a wonderful feat of flying. He landed 50 yards from the actual bridge.
Okay, so he's towed by a Halifax bomber, he's released over the channel, and he's like within 50 yards of the bridge. He had, and on board was 29 Oxen Bucks Light Infantry. And they came out the glider and captured the bridge. And I find it incredible that only one Victoria Cross was dished out on that day.
Absolutely.
Surely he deserved one.
Absolutely. Sergeant Major Hollis of the Green Howards won the Victoria Cross that day. I believe he knocked a tank out with a Piat anti-tank missile.
Do you find it incredible that only one was given out?
Yes, I suppose so, yes.
All right. Now this morning, beautiful sunny day. How does it compare to the day itself?
Oh, the day itself was quite overcast. Choppy seas, but I was lucky. You know, a lot of the boys were seasick on the way. All they wanted to do was get ashore.
Strong stomach.
Absolutely.
And still smiling. What's the secret to your health? Come on, tell us.
Oh, I don't know. I've never smoked.
Yes.
I like a chip now and again, and I've always exercised, you know. But, you know, I look after myself.
All right. Can we have a round of applause, please, for Gordon? Gordon Price. Gordon's actually on the radio this morning.
Hello, friends. This is Gabby Roslin. Yes, the Gabby Roslin. Welcome to the best bits of Radio 2 Breakfast Show.
We're back on the beach in front of Arromanches town, and I'm now joined by a very special guy for us, the Breakfast Show team, at least over the last couple of weeks. His name is Anthony Beaver. He's written this brilliant book called D-Day, The Battle for Normandy. And Anthony, I have to say, your book has been required reading for the team, for the production team here over the last few weeks. I finished my copy on the train from Paris yesterday afternoon. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Now, as ultimately successful as D-Day has been perceived to be over the years in history, in many ways it really was a question of the Allied forces throwing everything at the wall, hoping something would stick, wasn't it?
Well, we look back, and this is the trouble about history, is looking backwards, and it looks as if it was preordained, the victory, and it was always going to succeed. But in fact, it was a hell of a risk because of the weather. And if Eisenhower had actually delayed it by even another 2 weeks, because that would have been the only other alternative after the 6th of June, they would have ended up in the worst storm in the Channel in 20 years, and that would have wrecked the invasion fleet. So it was not a guaranteed victory at all.
But it's courageous, and planned as it was, a lot of it was pretty shambolic in the end.
A lot of it was. I mean, particularly if you like the airborne drops on the Cosmotown Peninsula, the 101st, 82nd Airborne, because air drops at night mean that paratroopers are scattered all over the place. But in a curious, unexpected way, this actually had an effect. The Germans just didn't know where the real attack was coming. Then when they hit the beaches, of course the sea was incredibly rough, and on some of the beaches the tide was unnecessarily or unusually high, and they couldn't get the tanks off the beaches. So, you know, there's bound to be chaos, and everyone says, you know, no plan survives the first contact with the enemy.
And you talk about the days and weeks after the initial landings and the subsequent battle for Normandy. For people who may not know, can you describe the tragic events that almost had to unfold in order for that to be won?
Well, Churchill was horrified about the idea of the number of French civilians who'd be killed in the battle, but also in the preparation for the battle. So as to seal off the invasion area, it meant bombing towns, bridges, and all the rest of it, and railways. But it was a question of bombing the towns, and that's where altogether some 15,000 French were killed even before the battle started, just in preparation. Another 3,000 French were killed on D-Day itself, which was more than all the Americans killed on Omaha Beach. So one has to remember the French civilians who died, who were sacrificed, as well, of course, as all of the brave Allied soldiers.
Actually, one of my favourite passages in the book, can I just read this on the beach? Here we go. So it's page 137, page 2 of chapter 10, it's called Sword. Other young French women also showed extraordinary bravery, coming to the beaches to help. Purely by chance, a student nurse who'd left her bathing dress in a beach hut the day before had arrived on a bicycle that morning to retrieve it. She ignored the wolf whistles of the amazed squaddies and set to work bandaging wounds. Her work lasted 2 days, and during the course of it, she met her future husband, a young English officer. Now, that story makes the hairs stand up on the back of my neck, even in this wind.
Yes. But I mean, would any novel come up with that?
No, well,
this is. I mean, the real truth, in fact, always produces far more fantastic stories.
And that is one ray of sunshine. Were there many others?
Yes, there were, thank God. I mean, when one writes about military history, it's usually so horrific that one seizes upon moments of, say, great courage and great sacrifice and also great compassion. There were moments when even the French felt slightly sorry for some of the German soldiers who were messed around, and I mean, there was one poor old German soldier I discovered, who was trying to bicycle away and wanted to get rid of his rifle. He'd offered it to a French farmer, and the farmer said, well, listen, come on, I'll hide you if necessary until the Allies come, and then you can surrender.
Okay, and I know you're very busy, so just one more quick question.
Yeah.
What's the overriding sentiment you took away from writing this book?
I think the feeling that, today we do not really understand what it was like to have gone through something like that. And we're living in a sort of post-military society, a health and safety environment. And certainly for the young, it's very difficult to understand the psychological pressures as well as the physical bravery and all the rest of it. And we have to remember that in the battle for Normandy, I mean, there were 30,000 psychological casualties in the American First Army alone, British and Canadians as well. The pressures of war were appalling, and especially for young 17, 18-year-olds, it was a hell of a thing to go through.
Anthony, thank you so much for talking to us.
Chris, thanks a lot.
Brilliant book, by the way.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Now, one of the keys to the success of the D-Day landings was finding a window of weather that would allow the landing craft a chance of making it to shore. In fact, D-Day itself was delayed by a day and very nearly cancelled due to bad weather. Alex Deakin now joins us to tell us more back in London. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, Chris.
Okay, now you often face pressure, don't you, weather forecasters nowadays? But there's never been pressure like the two forecasters back in 1944 had to put up with. The day before D-Day, the 5th of June, the most important weather forecast the Western world has ever known. Tell us more about that.
Absolutely incredible, yes, that is real pressure. Group Captain James Stagg, that's where the pressure was lying. He wasn't actually a meteorologist, he was more of a physicist, but he was appointed to the role of organising the meteorological information. He was getting feeds, information forecasts from the UK, also from the United States and from the Navy. He had to give the best guess to Eisenhower of when this window was going to be, when there was going to be a possibility that we could actually get across the channel. The dates were sort of set 4th, 5th, 6th, that around that time, because of the moon and because of the tides, but there had to be a weather window in there as well. Like you said, it was going to be on the 5th, but then there was a cold front sitting overhead. It was too cloudy for the aeroplanes to get across, and it was just too choppy. They spotted a potential window on the 6th and went for it, and yeah, he had to make that call. Captain James Stagg, very, very brave man.
And it was by no means a foregone conclusion. I mean, it was a split vote at best, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was 70 years ago. There wasn't any satellite picture. You couldn't see what was coming out from the Atlantic. There was very scarce observations that we see. There was no facsimile to send charts around. It was very, very basic information that you had to go on. Things have changed absolutely in the 70 years. There's no computers, of course, to run the forecast. All the charts had to be drawn by hand. Quite cleverly, they sent ships out into the Atlantic a few days ahead, so you could get more observations. So they actually increased the number of ships going the other way in the Atlantic to send back information, often via pigeon, so we could get more information about the weather that was coming from the Atlantic. So they were a little bit prepared, but what actually happened on the day, this window didn't really occur. There was a layer of low pressure that actually in the North Sea, and it just hung around. Actually, the conditions on the day weren't good at all. It was very, very blustery.
But had they waited, it could have been, well, it would have been a whole different story, because it would have been mid-June at the very earliest they could have invaded?
It was 2 weeks later before the tides would be low enough, and 2 weeks later the moon wouldn't have been full either. The thing about this early June spot was that the moon was full as well, which would have given them more light, obviously. And yeah, if they waited 2 weeks later, it would have been even worse. There was a bigger storm in the Channel in June, and it would have been absolutely impossible. So although the conditions were far from perfect on the 6th of June, it was the best opportunity they had. And Eisenhower made a note. There was a memo from Stagg, and Eisenhower made a note after the war that said, thank the gods we went when we did, because as I said, 2 weeks later it would have been impossible.
And the Germans weren't expecting us to invade at all around them because the weather was still relatively poor, and they just didn't think we would go for it.
No, they were doing observations as well. They didn't have quite as much information as we were able to crack their code, so we had information about their weather. They didn't have information or as much information across the UK as we thought. But it turns out there's been a bit of a twist in the tail over recent months. Some recent charts have appeared, and the Germans did actually know quite a bit of what was going on in the Atlantic, and they may have had actually a better weather forecast than we did. And they thought, yes, it's simply too bad. And actually, there's reports that Rob Drommel saw the forecast and went home for his wife's birthday because he thought, no, they won't be attacking. They won't be attacking now. And actually, we just snuck in there.
All right, Alex, thanks so much for being with us. It's a beautiful seaside town, Arromanches. More of a village, really. That's about the size of it. There's a museum here to our left, a handful of small hotels, B&Bs as you go up the hill, and loads of campsites. This morning, we're surrounded by gendarmes, the military, armoured vehicles of both past and present, thousands and thousands of sightseers. Now, last night, there were fireworks, parachute landings on the beach. It was a brilliant night, but for a while there was this really eerie atmosphere with people not quite knowing how to be. Mixed emotions, of course. This morning, however, it was a different story altogether. A new dawn, a new day, gorgeous morning here, flat calm sea, bright, bright sunshine, and a very special ceremony that we were very fortunate to be invited to, along with the National Veterans Association. Here's what happened. So, Enid, first of all, tell us how come you're here today?
I'm here to help this particular group of Normandy Veterans Association. This is the Surrey branch, and they've been coming for the past 30 years. And unfortunately, the numbers have got worse, and I'm just stepped in to help out.
Well done to you. Fred's here. He is a Normandy veteran. Fred, I hear this terrible rumour that you could be disbanding.
I don't think so. We won't disband at all. We will be here next year as the MVA.
Well, thank heaven for that, because we heard whispers that this could be the last flag raising ceremony.
Well, it could be, but we'll still be here.
Okay, and the first time you came back after World War II itself, when was that?
It was 12 years ago when I first came back.
And how many times have you been back since?
I've been here 12 times. I'm always very sad because we lost 9 sailors on board my ship. They were all killed. And that's one of the reasons I've come back here to commemorate their loss.
Does it get easier?
No, that doesn't change. I should still be crying at every service. So,
well, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Lewis, tell us about your role on D-Day itself.
Well, I was on HMS Magpie, which was one of the first ships to enter French territorial waters on D-Day. We got there at 2:30 in the morning and dropped anchor and waited for things to happen. Then we could see the landing craft creeping up around us, and we knew why we were anchored, because if we'd been a moving object, imagine the hazard we would have caused to those landing craft. And from there on in, we had a free ride, really, watching the whole thing happen. I was involved in it only on the periphery, really, but I was here at 2:30 in the morning.
Here we stand on the 70th anniversary in the Market Square in Arromanches. How does today compare to that day? Because we have a beautiful morning, don't we? It's black calm, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed. It is a lovely morning. Very fresh, but very nice. But I'm over the moon to be here. I'm more or less a guest. I'm vice chairman of the Aldershot branch, and we're so depleted that we're now marrying up with the Surrey branch to make enough of us to come across. As you can see, there's so few of us here now. But we will always come back to make sure that those that did not come back are remembered.
Okay, our thanks there in order to Enid March, Treasurer and Social Secretary, Fred Lee, a veteran, of course, and Lewis Trinder, Vice Chairman of the Aldershot branch.
Hi, I'm James Nasmith, and you're listening to the Chris Evans Daily Download.
Hey, Chris, listening to your show with tears streaming down my face in a world where people lose the will to live because their broadband has gone down for an hour or two. Ask those people to put themselves on a landing craft, get them to imagine kissing their wives, brothers, mums and dads, or their children goodbye. We should all hang our heads in shame and remember what all those brave people did to win us the freedom we now take for granted, squander and abuse. Thank you, all of my heroes, the Bear. The Bear, thanks so much for that. But let's not be too hard on ourselves. And I can understand that listening to the radio back at home is quite moving, quite emotional for you. But because we're out here in the middle and thick of it with all the veterans, it sort of doesn't feel like that for once. I'm having trouble with feeling any empathy with that at the moment, because there is a sense of joy and celebration here, and pals seeing each other for the first time in 5 years. A lot of the vets, the last time they were here was for the 65th anniversary. And I asked one of them, I asked Fred actually, who you just heard from, I asked him at 6:30 this morning, does it get any easier? And he came back for the first time after the Second World War 12 years ago, and he said no, it actually gets more difficult, because there are fewer and fewer of his pals each and every year as the years go by, and that will continue to be the way, of course. Hi Chris, loving the D-Day celebrations. Sadly lost my dad last year, aged 91. So many of the stories I'm listening to remind me of the stories he told me. My dad was Chris Clark, and in the past they were all so brave. We owe them so much. Thanks to you all. Angela in Blackburn. And just a very simple but huge thank you, Dawn from Peterborough. Fantastic history lesson like no other. Oh yes, you can bet your life where that one's concerned. We've been reading up on D-Day. We've read all the books. All the team have read all the books. If they ever ask me to go on Celebrity Mastermind, this is going to be my subject. We've watched the films, we've watched the documentaries, and we can't urge you enough to do the same. It's a fascinating subject, and it's so much more than just a commemoration of today. Today was the beginning of the end, but of course that end took so much longer than people hoped it would. So there's some of your texts. We've been receiving messages all week. Let's have some of those now, shall we?
My name is Betty Rawling. For some time I had a yearning to join the Women's Auxiliary Air Force and become a WAF. I was trained as a radar operator, and on D-Day I was stationed at RAF Branscombe, and we plotted high-flying aircraft. We were on a 3-watch system, and it was when the night watch came off in the morning that we learned. They said it had started, and you couldn't move for all the officers and people that came down to watch us.
Hello, my name is Ian Allen. I'm phoning regarding my father-in-law, Fred Lee, who was a leading stoker aboard HMS Niv on D-Day. Fred's story is that he escaped death by a turn of fate, really. He was asked to do an extra watch on the port side of his ship when he's normally assigned to do his watch on the starboard side. And then on that watch, a peculiar German weapon called a Mistel, a flying bomb, hit the starboard side of HMS Niv, killing 9 of Fred's shipmates and injuring 23. Obviously, Fred would have been there other than this turn of fate. Fred is a member of the Normandy Veterans Association, and he will be in Arromanches over the D-Day period. He will, in fact, be putting up the Normandy Veterans flag.
Hi, my name is Martine Howard, and I'm calling from Cardiff in South Wales. My dad was in the 49th West Riding Division and landed on D-Day. He was 19. They were all being seasick coming over. A very dull, dark, awful day. Absolutely terrified, and he admits to that, as most of them were. And during his time over there, he met my mother. They corresponded for 4 years by letter, and she came over to marry him after the war, and she lived here in South Wales all her life.
My name's Roy Cadman. I was a member of Number 3 Commando, which was part of Lord Lovett's Number 1 Commando Brigade. Our job was to land at H hour, capture the Pegasus Bridge. We left on the evening of the 5th of June, and we were all up on deck as we pulled out of foresash into the main Southampton water. And all the boats, all there were all blowing their hooters. All the people on those boats knew that we were going to be the first over, and they were all cheering us on. I saw some of my friends there who were really tough characters. The tears were running down their face. It was a momentous occasion, and I'll always remember that for the rest of my life. We were all sitting on the grass verge waiting our turn to get on the jetty, and there was a pub about 100 yards up the road, so we all thought, well, wouldn't mind a swift half before we got on. But unfortunately we were just starting to move off, when word came down, nobody is to go in the pub, everybody is to sit here where you are. It didn't concern the officers who went down en masse into the pub, and we're all sitting there licking our lips, and all this lot are down there getting the plonk down them. No, I shouldn't say that, because we had a good crowd of officers. My forces favourite would have been Vera, Lynn, because when we were in the SEAL camp, they had tannoys up on all the trees playing music all day long, from Vera, Lynn, Frank Sinatra, and all the top singers.
Tomorrow, just wait and see.
Hi, I'm Gary Barlow, and you're listening to the Chris Evans Podcast.
BBC Radio 2, Friday morning, the 7th anniversary of D-Day, and we are live from Arromanches on the Normandy coast, smack bang in the middle of the 5 beaches, Gull Beach, just to our left. Beyond that we have Juneau. Furthest to the east we have Sword Beach. Then we go right, we have Omaha and Utah Beach. Of course, the 2 beaches that the Americans were in charge of invading. Now, as far as Operation Overlord was concerned, that was the beginning of many other operations. Listen to what went on afterwards. Operation Anvil, Operation Atlantic, Operation Bag Ration, Operation Bluecoat, Charmwood, Cobra, Copperhead, Cork, Dragoon, Foxley, Glimmer, Goodwood. The list is endless, but there was one operation, Operation Fortitude, which a book was written about, called Operation Fortitude, the Greatest Hoax of the Second World War, and its author is on the line to talk to us now. Good morning, Joshua Levine.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Joshua. So, as important as what was going to happen, hopefully, as far as the Allied forces were concerned, was what was not going to happen, but hopefully what we could convince the Germans might happen.
Well, that's right. This was a really important operation that until recently people really didn't know anything about at all. The idea was to make the Germans, in particular make Hitler, because it was what Hitler thought that really mattered, think that the main invasion wasn't coming where you are now, in Normandy, but actually it was coming about 150 miles northeast, in the Pas-de-Calais. And so this whole thing, over a period of months, this whole thing was to make Hitler believe, and he already did have some idea that there was another invasion coming, but to absolutely convince him that that was going to happen, and it succeeded.
Okay, now Hitler was hedging his bets with me because he didn't like to be wrong. So what was he telling his people?
He was telling his people, he thought that the first invasion would come in Normandy, but that would only be a diversion. And the next one would come in the Pas-de-Calais. So what the British had to do, the deceivers had to do, was to absolutely hammer that home. And they did it partly through physical deception. They built fake landing craft, they built fake tanks, inflatable tanks. But the problem was the Germans really weren't watching. They didn't have the airplanes, the capacity to do reconnaissance. And they also, what they also did was created fake wireless messages, entire networks, to make it look as if there was units in southeast England ready to invade in the Pas-de-Calais. But again, the Germans weren't particularly listening. So what they had to do in the end was rely on the double agents. These double agents, who the Germans thought were their loyal spies, were in fact working for the British. And the most important of the double agents was a Spanish chicken farmer called Garbo, who was in Britain sending messages back to his German handlers. And on the night before D-Day, he sent a message to his German handlers saying that the invasion had begun. This was actually before D-Day. He gave the game away. And the reason he was able to do that, and he had the permission of Eisenhower to do this, the reason he was able to do that was because it was coming too late for the Germans actually actively to react and to be able to do anything substantive about it. And as it happened, the Germans weren't listening that night, even though they'd been told to listen out for him. So the next morning he was furious. He said, "Why weren't you listening? I gave you the warning." And they promised they would be listening in future. And then 2 days later, 2 days, this is 70 years ago, 2 days from now, on the night of the 8th of June, he gave really the most important message of his career. He said, "I can tell you categorically, I'm absolutely certain that what is happening at the moment in Normandy is a diversion. It's happening in order for you to send all your troops down here, but you must not. What you must do is keep your units up in the Pas-de-Calais, because another invasion is coming. I have all these sub-agents, and they all agree with me. We're quite sure about it. And that message was sent, and we absolutely know that it was handed up to Hitler, because there's a copy of that message with his mark upon it. And so what happened the next morning was that two units, the 1st Panzer Division and the Deutschland Regiment, which were on the way from the Pas-de-Calais to Normandy, were turned straight round to go back to the Pas-de-Calais, and 2 other divisions, their move was cancelled. So these units stayed in the Pas-de-Calais to face an invasion that was never going to come. And the fact is that for weeks afterwards, the Nazis and Hitler still believed that that invasion was going to come up in the Pas-de-Calais, and of course it never was. It was masterful.
All right, so thank God for Garbo.
Thank God for Garbo.
Okay, and thank you for being on the show today. That's Joshua Levine, author of Operation Fortitude, the greatest hoax of the Second World War.
Hi, I'm Will Young, and you're listening to the Chris Evans Daily Download. For more information, head to the Radio 2 website.
Chris can't see to drive through these tears so moved, as my son is out serving in the RAF in the Falklands at the moment, and I miss him so much, but I know he'll be home in 2 months. How Mum's coped not knowing back then, I'll never know. So brave, says Louise in Todd Morden. Chris, hard to drive with tears streaming down my face, but so important to commemorate the sacrifices made in our name, says Lee in Goulburn. Loads of these, thousands of these. My dad landed on Sword Beach as part of number 4 Commando. He lost his best pal that day, but I'm really proud of him, says Sandra in Bedford. All right, now you've heard from Dame Vera Lynn singing there. How about a special message from the lady herself? Here she is.
Hello, Chris. I'm Dame Vera Lynn. I'm so pleased to hear that you are commemorating D-Day. On D-Day, I was flying back from Burma, where I had been entertaining the troops. We had a difficult trip back because there was something going on down below, so we had to get back home via Gibraltar and anywhere but across the channel, because there was a little problem going on down there. So of course I was very pleased to get back, knowing I'd been to see the boys and be able to sing to them and chat to them, tell them about home. So it was very nice to be able to have had the opportunity then to have done that. Well, thank you, Chris, and it's good night, sweetheart.
The choice there of Dame Vera Lynn. Dame Vera Lynn, thank you so much for being with us this morning, and thank you for your cake, which was absolutely beautiful the other day. Right, there are throngs of people here now. Good morning, sir. What's your name?
My name's Gary Freakley.
What about the sunshine in Arromanches this morning?
Fantastic, Chris, fantastic.
It's really hot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great.
So who are you with?
We're a bunch of civilians, but we're ex-army. We've come to pay our respect for the veterans of D-Day today.
And do these guys in your ranks this morning have names?
Yes. Yes, my name's 24565 345 Craftsman Lee, Chris.
All right.
Tracy Freakley, I'm his wife.
Hello, Tracy.
Hi, Martin Upton. Yeah, I'm part of the party.
Okay, well, welcome to all of you. Where are you staying?
We're staying in a campsite, a place called, and forgive my French pronunciation, but Matragny.
All right. What's it like? What's the atmosphere like?
Absolutely brilliant. Loads of vintage cars, loads of people in vintage costumes. It's brilliant.
And we've got to say to people back in Britain, haven't we? I mean, you know, they can't be here today. It's too late for that. But just come here anyway.
Exactly. It's so welcoming, and the food's fantastic. The people are fantastic. It's great.
And all the towns, the 24 towns that were involved in the invasion, which span from east to west, I mean, you can do them all in a day and a half, can't you?
Quite easily, but there's always something to see. We've been 4 or 5 years now, and we find something new every year.
Well, I've never been before today, but can I join your club, please? Because I want to come back every year.
If you buy a motorbike, of course you can, Chris. Yeah, we're on motorbikes.
My wife told me I can't buy a motorbike. We had that discussion too. Anyway, that's another story. Thank you for talking to us. All right, so now Adrian and Karen Cox are with us this morning, who run the Normandy Beach B&B, which is a marvellous stone brick affair, almost French Resistance farmhouse-like, I think, perched at the top of the town. about a couple of hundred yards from the beach. Almost there, I think, to reassure visitors as they arrive that everything's all right. Adrian joins me now. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Chris.
Thank you for our board and lodgings, first of all.
An absolute pleasure.
Okay, now how come you found yourself here?
Well, I've always loved France. I've worked a lot in France over the years. Daughter came to a school age. We thought it'd be great fun for her to take a different way of learning. So she's been over here since 5 years old. She's nearly 20 now, and we tagged along behind her.
And you've set your little place up here. How did you come across the property?
We really liked Arromanches years and years and years ago. We never realised we actually wanted to live here. It was always a holiday zone. So we came back and looked, and we found this ruined old farmhouse. Nobody else seemed to want to buy it. Did the deal, bought it, and then realised I had no clue what I was doing, how to rebuild it. So it's been quite a steep learning curve.
Right, now last night we were told by somebody in the know, tomorrow on your programme you need to talk to Mr. Arromanches. And I'm thinking, I said, well, who is that? They said, it's Adrian. I can't believe that an Englishman has now become renowned as Monsieur Arromanches. To what extent have you climbed the hierarchy here?
Well, I actually won the local election. I got most votes.
Which I find incredible.
They're lovely, lovely people around here. I've got some amazing friends. And yeah, somehow I ended up top of the poll. But as I'm not dual nationality, I'm still a Brit. I can't be a mayor or a mayoress once, so I'm very happy and privileged to be a town councillor and get involved with all this stuff.
Well, good for you, good for them. It is ironic, though, I have to say. Describe to us, if you don't mind, Adrian, now, how this year's commemoration has grown exponentially from what it was going to be 6 months ago, or even a few weeks ago, to what it's become today.
It's been quite a roller coaster ride. Go back 6 to 8 months and we weren't thought of as being an official parade, but we knew that the veterans love coming to Arromanches. There were always going to be 200-300 veterans going to turn up. So we had to start putting things in place. So we knocked on a few doors. The embassy has been brilliant. Ministry of Defence has been brilliant. People of Arromanches have come together, and it's gone absolutely berserk. This morning, as you know, we've got the Dutch royal family here. We've got some wonderful royals turning up for a tea party in Arromanches with the veterans this afternoon, and it's just a stunning, stunning, stunning moment.
Now, you say wonderful royals this afternoon. Do you have to keep that a secret?
No.
Okay, we have the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Kate and Wills are going to be here.
Indeed, indeed.
And you have to brief them, don't you?
Oh no, that's not my job.
Oh, I thought
I might catch a glimpse of them.
All right. I think you'll probably do more than that. Is it fair to say the MOD have suddenly taken over the party?
No. We actually asked them to come along and help us put on a decent parade. I'm not military, and I didn't want to make a mess of it. And they've gone absolutely out of their way to give us loads of bodies to look after the veterans. Superb parade organisation, fantastic music. It's going to be a heck of a day.
All right, well, listen, thanks so much for having us in your quarters. And you are aware that from it just being me in my room last night, producer Paul and Golden Graham ended up going top to tail.
I know, you should have said we took an extra bed out of that room just yesterday morning. So we could have left it in for you.
Well, no, it's fine. You're
always welcome back.
We're very happy. Thanks for the toffee caramels under my pillow.
That was darling Karen, my wife, thought those.
They kept my throat going, I have to say. Well, listen, thanks so much for having us. We are having the best time imaginable.
Really pleased.
Hi, I'm Kylie, and you're listening to the Chris Evans Daily Download. For more information, photos, and fun, head to the Radio 2 website.
Right now, we have retreated from the town square to the Normandy Hotel. Hooray! Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Okay, this is where the dastardly veterans have been hanging out. They had their big deal last night. Talking currently to a veteran Private Percy. Good morning, Percy.
Good morning, Chris.
Tell us about your trip this year so far.
Well, it's been very eventful so far. We've been all over the blooming place. Got held up quite a lot, as you can imagine.
Yes.
But apart from that, it's been pretty good. The weather hasn't been too bad for us, so we hadn't done too bad all in all.
Okay, with 70 years on, tell us about 70 years ago from your point of view.
Well, from my point of view, 70 years ago, I landed on Sword Beach, down the other end of the hit from where we are now, and landed at 4:30 in the afternoon. It was a few shells coming over and things like that, but nothing else. But we had to abandon the beach because it's a terrible state with burnt out tanks, dead bodies, and so forth. So, and then they moved a few of us down to Weaston, right down the very end, to a pillbox there, and we were manning the German pillbox, watching the Germans over the other side of the river.
And having landed later on in the day on D-Day,
yeah.
Were you aware of the devastation that had taken place beforehand?
Oh yes, because we set sail from Portsmouth at 6 o'clock, arrived over here at 11 o'clock, and sat there, and there was the Warspite and the Ramillies on the left-hand side, firing shells over the Cairn every 20 minutes, so the noise was quite a lot. There's hundreds of boats in there. You know, nobody really knew what was going on for a moment until we were told what to do to land ashore. But there was only 8 of us landed for a start, and then we just stayed there. We done nothing until the next morning.
You just had to wait?
Just to sit there and wait.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
not the best place to wait in the world.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, thank you for talking to us, Percy. Now let's talk to Bill Price, Lance Bombardier Bill Price, who's 100 years old, everybody. Come on, let's hear it for Bill. Good morning, Bill. Could you hear that cheer there?
Yes. Thank you very much. Drinks all round. Thank you.
What was last night like for you, Bill? What did you get up to last night?
Well, I was in the 76th Anti-Aircraft Brigade that formed the defence of the harbour. And I was on board one of the first ships. In fact, it was the 17 line to be sunk, on the sunken merchant ships to form the first breakwater. That was, I was laying offshore on D-Day itself, and we were getting in line. My ship I was on, SS Enid, was 7 in line to be sunk. And then following that, a few days after, I was transferred to HMS Dispatch, which was the headquarters ship for the harbour. So the harbour played a very big part in the supplies right throughout the campaign, because until they had taken Hadtwell, the Mulberry Harbour was the only place where the supplies were coming in. That included the petrol, Pluto.
Now, Bill, what would you like to say to people at home listening? There are millions of people listening to this programme at home. What would you like them to remember?
Well, if they're old enough, yes. Of course, the Blitz in London, which I was stationed in the London Parks in those days, and, well, their freedom. And I could say a lot more about that, but it's not policy for me to say that.
Sticking to his orders, as always, all right.
I don't want to come up to the present day, do I?
Okay.
You know, it'd be a bit dangerous.
I don't blame you, All right, can we have 3 cheers for everybody here tonight? Sorry, this morning. By the way, been up since last night. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. All right, this is BBC Radio 2, live from Normandy.
Hi, I'm Josh Groban, and when I'm not making sweet, sweet music, I listen to the Chris Evans Daily Download, and that's what you're doing too.
The bands are striking up. Any moment it could happen again. We really don't mind. There are thousands of people here, and there are lots of people dressed up as soldiers and various members of the military who aren't really, because they're the reenactors, they're the fans. They come down in their restored armoured vehicles and on their motorbikes. Now, are you one of those, sir?
No, I'd like to say I'm not one of them. I'm a real one.
You're the real deal.
The real deal.
What's your name, my friend?
I'm Steve Smart from Kinloch Barks up in North Scotland.
Okay, and what part are you playing here today?
Today, obviously, we're going to be here to represent, obviously, the British forces. Obviously, with the veterans that will be parading later on, the British veterans, which will be paraded later on today. Basically, we're going to be here to support them and obviously just be here for them.
Now, there are pretty terrible things going on around the world at the moment, and there always will be. That's just the nature of human beings, sadly. But can you even imagine what it was like on this day 70 years ago for the guys who you are with this morning?
Yeah, it's just amazing that for us to be here today and to be part of this parade for them is quite humbling. And you can't imagine. For what we do, where we work now, it's just on a different scale from what they've done. It's just unbelievable.
And they're so modest, aren't they?
Yeah, it's just when you speak to them, it's like, yeah, we've done that, and it's like some stuff to shrug their shoulders and get on with it.
What's your next job right now?
At the moment, I'm currently starting again. Obviously, I've got 3 years to stay in North Scotland, which just so happens to be my hometown. We'll stay up there and we'll see what happens with Kenya in the future, maybe Falklands next year, and then see where it goes.
All right, pal, great to talk to you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks so much for being here. Enjoy the sunshine. Right, joining me now is Jack Page, another veteran. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Well, not too bad.
Now,
Thank you.
Jack on D-Day was a leading hand as part of the Royal Navy Beach Party. Where did you sail from, Jack?
Sailed from Tilbury, and we sailed right around the coast. And the last town I saw before we crossed the channel, that was the night before D-Day, was Bognor Regis. That's where I live.
Really?
Yeah.
How spooky. And we've talked to a lot of people today about what it was like to arrive here on D-Day, you know, in the morning and in the afternoon. What was it like to see Bognor Regis for what could have been the last time?
Yeah, well, that's what I thought. I wonder if that is the last time I'll see it. Yeah, and then we just turned left and straight across the channel we came. And the following morning, I saw more ships than I ever saw in my life, or ever see again.
Well, we've not talked to anybody about that. I mean, we've seen the pictures, and you know, the documentaries have been made and the movies have been made. But it is, and it was rather, and it probably will always be the largest mast armada of all time.
Certainly was.
So can you just try and put us behind your eyes for a moment, if you can?
Yeah. Well, there were ships everywhere. The water was pretty rough, and close to me was a hospital ship. And the worst sight that you could ever see was the ducks coming back offshore, those that landed first. The casualties were being brought back to a hospital ship. And they're bandaged, some of them were blinded, you could see that, had a bandage around their eyes, and it was a terrible sight to see.
And did that make you more frightened or more determined, or how did it make you feel?
A bit of each, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, now you told me just before whilst the news on there that you actually arrived, well, you know, whilst you were afloat on the water, you were a leading hand, but then you were promoted on the beach.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I don't know. I don't know, but when I came out of Normandy and I went up to Belgium, I applied to be petty officer, and they said you was promoted on June the 30th on Normandy Beach. I said, well, nobody ever told me, but that's when they promoted me, and that's when my back pay went back to.
Oh, right, so they did pay you?
Yeah.
Oh, they took you in too?
Yeah.
Very good. Right.
Yes.
Now, you, as much as anyone here today, deserve a song. What song would you like us to play and why?
In the Mood. It's a wartime song.
Glenn Miller, who would you like to dedicate this to?
I'll dedicate that to Linda Thorne.
Linda Thorne, who's she?
Yeah. She's my carer.
Okay, Linda's here. Fantastic. All the carers, all the supporters, without whom the veterans couldn't be here today. Let's dedicate it to all those guys, shall we?
Yes, we will.
Thanks for talking to us, Jack.
Yeah, okay. Pleasure.
Hi, it's Jeff Lynn, and you're listening to the Chris Evans Daily Download. For more information, photos and fun, head to the Radio 2 website.
Now it's time on the Breakfast Show for a very special Pause for Thought. Here we are with Major Mandy Reynolds, National Chaplain for the Normandy Veterans Association. Good morning, Major Mandy.
Good morning, Chris.
What a poignant moment.
It's amazing, isn't it? I can't imagine what it must have been like on D-Day, but this just gives you a feel. We've just had the flag raising ceremony, and Surrey branch have had the freedom of Arromanches for quite a number of years now, and theirs is the only flag that's allowed to fly other than the tricolour and any royal flags. So it's been a real honour to see the guys putting up their standard for the last time.
I know. I can't help feeling that's not right.
It's not. You look at these Normandy veterans, my beloved Normandy boys, I have to say. They're getting older and frailer, and, you know, I think they've decided it's time that they now start to take it easy. And so it is very poignant.
Bow out gracefully.
Bow out, well, yes. As gracefully as these men can.
Okay, bit of a night last night. Right.
Yes.
So they are your beloved veterans. You are their beloved National Chaplain. Can we have today's Pause for Thought, please?
You certainly can. Today is a very poignant day for all who, despite age or infirmity, have made their pilgrimage to these shores of Normandy to revisit the beaches where they landed on D-Day. Many of these veterans were just young men of no more than 18 or 19 on the 6th of June 1944 when they lost their lives. But this morning I very much want to pay tribute to the veterans who came home with all the memories and scars, not just physical ones, but the mental scars which they have carried with them, often silently through the years. these men we see now, who still walk proudly with their beret, cap badges, an array of medals as testimony to their endeavours, have a twinkle in their eye, and who can drink the likes of you and me under the table and still walk back to the hotel in a straight line, are often not comfortable talking about their experiences. And it's only in the last few years many have opened up and talked about the things they endured here 70 years ago. As the daughter of a Normandy veteran, it was only shortly before he died last year that we as a family came to know that Dad, having landed on Sword Beach, eventually went on to be at the liberation of Belsen, something he didn't share easily with us. I've often heard it asked, why do we still celebrate war with events such as this here in Normandy? Surely we're just glorifying war. Well, actually no, we're not. We're all aware of the horrors and futility of war. But what we do celebrate is the courage, discipline and selfless commitment these men showed in order to make a better world for those that come after. In the military today, men and women continue striving to uphold those same qualities of courage and selfless commitment which these veterans showed in abundance all those years ago. Theirs are the footsteps in which we tread, hallowed ground. It is a huge privilege to share this time with these men, their families and all who stand and say, with the sound of the last post echoing through the air like an ethereal lullaby to those who sleep in that eternal rest, we will remember them.
Mandy, thank you. Now, fancy a paddle?
But if you're going to get your feet wet with me, absolutely.
Let's go, babe. If you want to find out more about D-Day, there's lots of stuff you can watch. You can watch those brilliant documentaries by our very own Dan Snow. They're on the iPlayer for 3 more days, just 3 more days. They were broadcast last on Sunday on BBC Two at 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. They're called the D-Day Landings, The Last Heroes. Please watch those if you can. Saving Private Ryan, of course, The Longest Day. What an epic movie that is. The first 2 episodes of Band of Brothers. And if you want to read anything, read that book by Anthony Beevor, D-Day, The Battle for Normandy. The last paragraph of which reads like this: the battle for Normandy did not go as planned, but even the armchair critics could never dispute the eventual outcome. However imperfect, one must also consider what might have happened should the extraordinary undertaking of D-Day have failed. The post-war map and the history of Europe would have been very different indeed. So that's almost it from us, but of course today has been all about, and will continue to be all about, saluting the brave men and women who fought for our freedom and remembering those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. So let's hand over to the veterans themselves to finish, shall we? Okay, reading the words of the poem The Fallen by Loris Binion. Here they go, and here we go. Goodbye from Normandy, and thank you so much for listening.
With proud thanksgiving, a mother for her children, England mourns for her dead across the sea. Flesh of her flesh they were, spirit of her spirit, fallen in the cause of the free.
Solemn the drums thrill, death august and royal, sings sorrow into immortal spheres. There is music in the midst of desolation, and the glory that shines upon our tears.
They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds, uncounted. They fell their faces to the foe.